All right, getting into our first story tonight. Donald Trump fears that he is going to be charged in connection with the January 6th riot at the Capitol. He released a statement on Truth Social where he said he was anticipating that he'd be investigated. We have a quote from him here. Deranged Jack Smith, the prosecutor with President Joe Biden's DOJ, sent a letter, again it was Sunday night, stating that I am a target of the January 6th grand jury investigation and giving me a very short 4 days to respond to the grand jury, which almost always means an arrest and indictment. So that's massive. The former host of this show, Sir Timcast, often has a two-word phrase that he references, especially in reference to the president of the United States having legal pressure on him or a former president being arrested. You all know what that phrase is?
I don't have any drink to hand. So are we allowed to answer that at this point?
Yeah, no. Civil war. That is what he would say. And in honor of him, I must repeat those words because it's what he would have wanted. How do you guys feel about this? And also, as a Brit looking and seeing American culture and society in governmental operations, how does this look to you?
Well, we, as an American vassal state, a relationship which should have never been inverted, but there you go, saying controversial things to the chat already. It's obviously a political indictment. It's obvious that they're trying to just get him off of the ballot in whichever states which would bar him if he were indicted from being off, because they're petrified of him winning a safe and secure election. One of the most egregious ones that we covered on our show was the E. Jean Carroll case, where... And we can't say she was making it up because that would be libelous. But considering she might have gotten her story from a Law and Order episode, this does not look very credulous. Also, the whole documents thing. I mean, yeah, okay, he's probably stored them improperly, judging by the photos that were given to the New York Post. But he does have declassification power. Joe Biden does the same thing. Obviously a partisan justice system. And so this is just another attempt in a long line of incredulous claims to try and scare him off. And frankly, as a Brit, I don't think our political establishment would like Donald Trump back in. I mean, the then Home Secretary Sajid Javid wrote a piece for The Times saying that he publicly endorsed Joe Biden while still in government. Things like that, just ridiculous. But Trump's energy policy, for example, fantastic for the UK before we decided to blow all our money on Ukraine and demolish our energy security. And this was one of my former jobs, I used to work in energy policy. And Trump, from 2017 to 2019, made America not only the first energy independent for the first time since Nixon signed the mandate with expanding fracking, getting natural gas, but you guys, despite Donald Trump being a climate denier, he made the US lead the world in reducing their emissions. And so you're achieving environmental goals whilst also making it so that you're insulated from geopolitical conflict.
Yeah.
And of course, the uniparty types that wanted to sell all of your strategic reserves to Sinopec couldn't have that. And so if Trump were back, the UK would be absolutely benefiting, but they're doing their best not to.
I think a lot of us would be benefiting from it. One thing I find fascinating, you mentioned climate change, the fact that Trump is a climate denier. This is one of the most ridiculous phrases that you hear thrown around politically. A person can be totally accepting of every single thing that's even supposedly in the scientific consensus surrounding climate change, but if they're not an alarmist who says the world is going to end in 12 years and then says that again in 12 years when the prophecy doesn't come true, then they're a total climate denier and we have to disregard everything they say. There's a sleight of hand that frequently occurs where they'll say something like 97% of climate scientists agree that humans are having some effect on global temperatures or climate. And they will use that to suggest that 97% of climate scientists say that we have catastrophic climate change that is going to kill us in 10 years if we don't pass the Green New Deal. It's ridiculous. But it's also interesting to get back to the topic after I've pontificated on that, to just consider the way Trump is viewed in Europe. And I'm curious what the view of the average English person is. It doesn't surprise me that your establishment doesn't like him because he's very anti-establishment. But like on the ground, when you're just dealing with everyday average people, what's the general feeling about him? And also, is this kind of thing talked about? The legal scandals here, January 6th, whether it was an insurrection, etc.
They're talked about peripherally. It depends on if a person watches mainstream news or not. If they watch the BBC just because, and I don't wish to disparage my own mother, she's lovely and she supports my career, but if you're turning on the TV and you go on autopilot, you might see the 60-second news bulletin that says President Trump has been indicted again, or the January 6th committee has declared him guilty or whatever. Lots of people will find his rhetoric bombastic just because of British manners. It's kind of outside
enough.
of our norm.
But I think like pretty much all rhetoric is bombastic compared to British manners, no?
Well, sort of. Actually, to be fair, I've seen lots of Americans really enjoy our House of Commons debates because we do
They're amazing.
deliberately insult each other at the dispatch box. Though it's still bread and circuses because they both agree on the same policies at all times.
Yeah.
Like if you examine the Conservative and Labour parties, like it's the Michael Malice phrase: conservatism is progressivism driving the speed limit.
Amen.
Well, both parties just flooring it right now. But not to wander off topic. Lots of the British public, I think lots of them like Trump's character just because he's kind of funny and how he sticks it to the establishment, in the same way that they liked Nigel Farage and Brexit. Like Nigel Farage got about 4 million votes the last time he ran and didn't get a seat because of our electoral system. But lots of the British public were so fed up with the capital P progressive unidirectional narrative that Tony Blair in the 1990s said was as inevitable as the changing of the seasons, that they really just wanted to stick it to the establishment. And this is why they voted Boris eventually in 2019. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out very well because he ended up being a progressive as well. But he won a stonking majority because people thought he was a bit like a British Trump, a sort of foul-mouthed guy who was dragged backwards through Eton, and he thought he'd be on their side. And so the perception of Trump is basically, if you watch the mainstream news, you're not going to like him because you think he's rude and bombastic and he overthrows democracy. If not, you're going to think of him similar to Brexit, of these people aren't acting in my interests and I will take a stick of dynamite to tear it all asunder, than another sort of polite, nodding establishment figure like a Mitt Romney or something.
I think so many Americans feel sort of similarly. They actually like Trump's energy. It is appealing to them. He is a breath of fresh air. That's why these campaigns to get him indicted on literally anything, to have the headline always be Trump charged, Trump investigated, Trump, whatever, to make him look bad is so important, because so much of the public, and I'm sure it's true across the ocean, just read the headline, right? They'll never go into the details of what's being said. They just want to string enough words together to scare you away from inquiring further. And that's sort of what's toxic about our news cycle. One of the most powerful moments of the campaign this year for me has been Trump on stage at town hall refuting everything that was brought against him with the E. Jean Carroll case. And it was hilarious. I mean, he
beautiful.
is a comedian. It's so funny.
Right.
And also calm and logical. And it's not, this terrible, ugly speech. It's just like, I own the plaza across the street. Why would any of this have happened?
Well, that's exactly right. And so here's one of the things about Donald Trump that I think is often overlooked, and one of the probably most unfair characterizations you'll see of him. Of course, he's going to be compared to a fascist because they compare everyone they don't like to a fascist. But his speeches are the most anti-fascistic style speeches you're ever going to hear. A fascist leader gets up in front of the people. He's extremely serious. He's extremely strong. It's not time for joking around. It's time for business. Trump just goes up there and he riffs and he's hilarious and everyone has a great time. And part of what was so beautiful about that CNN town hall was the fact that this woman was speaking to him and literally positioning herself as the anti-fun person. This is a CNN town hall. This audience was not selected because they loved Donald Trump, and even they were cracking up and having a great time because of his delivery and his performance. Now, you can sit there and say, I don't want that in a leader. I don't want someone who cracks jokes. I don't want someone who has that kind of charisma. Sure, whatever. That's not what I'm trying to address here. But my point is, the media will play clips of him and then criticize those, and even then they don't end up looking that great. Attempting to criticize him in person, on stage, when the people in the audience are on his side is the worst possible optics, because everyone's having a great time and laughing, and CNN is there going, no, stop having fun. You need to stop having fun right now. And they ended up cutting it early because of that.
Caitlin Collins, is that what you're talking about?
I believe so.
She's an interesting person, and I don't want to ad hominem on that girl too much but I just noticed.
Well, I'm not ad hominem her. I'm just saying it was very.
I'm about to, so I'm just saying beforehand I don't want to, but I'm going to. I like her, but I mean I like what she's doing. I'm glad she's out there, but like her smile, she's got I don't know if she got work done on her face, but the sides of her mouth are like up in a smile, but everything about her face shows misery.
Doesn't smile behind the eyes.
Yeah.
There's lots of people like that in media. Yeah. It's a sort of, I don't want to psychoanalyze or step outside my remit. It's a telltale sign of psychopathy.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm not going to speak to her condition specifically, but that is something you'll notice. There's
such cases.
Eerie, exactly, and that's why it makes sense that there's so many people in the media who have that kind of face. And that is Hillary Clinton's face, right?
Yes.
I mean, she's very much got that phony smile, and this is something about Donald Trump that a lot of people appreciate, and I think even people who don't agree with him policy-wise will usually acknowledge is a good thing. Somebody like Hillary Clinton, right? She's a person who follows every single one of the rules and conventions necessary to create good optics for oneself and be considered a conventional political leader who could be tenable to the American people and the establishment. But behind closed doors and behind the scenes, we all know she's unbearably corrupt. Donald Trump, on the other hand, follows none of the rules, none of the social conventions surrounding the way political leaders are supposed to speak and act in this country. And yet, relative to basically every establishment political leader in this country, and especially Hillary Clinton, he's squeaky clean. This is not something I would have said about him back in 2016, by the way. I wouldn't vouch for the guy at that time. When the Russia stuff first came up, I was unsure if it was true or not. But as they continued to investigate and it continued to become apparent that it was a nothing burger, and they spent years trying to nail him on anything they could with all of these random investigations, and they found nothing, it became obvious that this guy was way cleaner than I ever thought he was to begin with.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.